"You're pathetic, Julia. No wonder your dad left. You're worthless and will never deserve a real family." Those were the last words my boyfriend of 4 years spat at me before walking out of my life like a storm had passed, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. I stood there, in the middle of my apartment, staring at the empty space he left. My heart was pounding, my chest tight, and my mind refused to catch up with the reality in front of me. Everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and trust had just been shattered. I never imagined my life could twist like this. I had plans, beautiful, carefully thought out plans. I was Julia Mills, 30 years old, a dedicated HVAC technician in Austin, working my way steadily through life, responsible and dependable. I had a future mapped out with Evan, the man I loved more than anything, a man I thought I could count on. He was charming, strong, dependable, the kind of man who made you believe in stability, in forever. We had talked about marriage. I had imagined the proposal, the ring, the life we would build together. And yet here I was, betrayed in the cruelest, most calculated way possible. The person I trusted with my heart, the one I thought would never hurt me, had spent 2 years building a secret life behind my back. And now the universe decided to hand me the consequence. The child of their affair, a tiny, fragile life, completely innocent, yet irrevocably tied to the betrayal that had torn my world apart. I didn't want this, I hadn't asked for it, and yet the moment they called me about Ivy, Evan's daughter, with another woman who had disappeared, I realized life had a twisted sense of humor. Suddenly, I wasn't just a victim of heartbreak. I was responsible for a tiny human being whose existence embodied the lies, the lust, and the devastation I had endured. As I held Ivy for the first time, her dark eyes staring at me with a seriousness far beyond her 10 months, I felt an unfamiliar weight settle on my shoulders. It wasn't love yet, it was responsibility. But responsibility had a strange way of transforming into something more, something that could redefine a life that had just been ripped apart. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I was strong enough, but I knew one thing. The woman who had abandoned her child, who had told me I'd never deserve a real family, would not define who I was. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, feeling Ivy's tiny fingers clutch my shirt, and whispered to myself, "I'll figure this out. Somehow." Little did I know, my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. I'm Julia Mills, 30 years old, and I've always been the responsible one. Ever since I was a teenager, I felt the weight of expectations pressing on me. School, work, family. My parents weren't strict, but they were realistic. Be reliable, Julia. People need you to be steady. And I took that to heart. I've always worked hard, saved carefully, and avoided risks, believing that if I did everything right, life would reward me. I met Evan Pierce 8 years ago at a company mixer. He was charming, easy to talk to, and the kind of man who made everyone feel at ease. At first, I didn't think he'd notice someone like me, quiet, methodical, grounded. But he did. He liked that I was honest, that I didn't play games. Our first date was simple: coffee, a walk along the river, and endless conversation. I remember thinking, this is the man I could spend my life with. Over the years, we built a life together that seemed perfect on the surface. I was a careful planner. Evan was ambitious, sometimes spontaneous. He pushed me to step out of my comfort zone, to enjoy life beyond routines and schedules. I loved him for that, and perhaps, unknowingly, I trusted him too much. Our relationship wasn't without its minor cracks. There were nights he'd stay out late, claiming work or friends, and mornings when he seemed distant. I noticed the small things: his phone buzzing too often, his quick glances at it, the little smirk that didn't reach his eyes. I brushed them off, telling myself I was imagining things. He's just stressed. He loves me. He wouldn't do that. I got along well with his family, at least on the surface. Evan's parents were the traditional type, expecting me to be more than just a girlfriend. I'd spent holidays at their house, enduring quiet judgment, subtle tests of my worthiness. I tried to be perfect, polite, attentive, careful not to upset them. His younger sister, Lila, was a whirlwind of energy, always teasing me, pushing me, but I secretly liked that she challenged me. It meant she cared. But sometimes their expectations added pressure, making me second-guess my place in Evan's world. Friends often told me I was too cautious, too safe. I'd shrug it off, believing that reliability was a virtue, not a flaw. I didn't care about being the most exciting woman in the room. I wanted stability, honesty, and love. I thought Evan appreciated that about me. We had dreams together, small, achievable dreams at first. A house with a backyard where we could entertain friends, maybe a dog, a kitchen filled with laughter. I imagined proposing the day he'd ask me, the ring sparkling in my hand as we laughed through life together, and I thought for years that nothing could break the foundation we were building. Little did I know, the cracks were there all along. Evan was capable of charm and warmth, but also secrets and deception, and I was about to learn, the hard way, that love isn't always enough to shield you from betrayal. Those early signs I ignored, late nights, distracted glances, fleeting excuses, were the threads of a hidden tapestry that would unravel my world entirely. I had no idea that the man I was preparing to spend my life with, the man whose family I tried so hard to impress, was already weaving a double life that would leave me holding pieces of a shattered dream and a child who would change everything. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Evan would come home late from work events that weren't on the calendar. His phone, once left casually on the counter, now disappeared into pockets or drawers whenever I entered the room. I caught glimpses of texts he'd quickly hide, and though a part of me screamed to ask, to confront, another part whispered, "Don't ruin what you have. Don't be paranoid." Friends began dropping hints too. A casual comment from Lila, Evan's sister, "You guys always seem so separate lately." Or a nudge from my best friend Harper over coffee. "Are you sure he's being honest with you?" I smiled, laughed it off. I trusted Evan. I wanted to trust him. Even Evan's parents subtly seemed to plant seeds of doubt. During dinner, his mother, Patricia, would mention how a woman needs excitement, not just stability, or how sometimes people grow apart quietly without noticing. She'd say it as if offering advice, but the words stung, burrowing under my skin. I wondered if she thought I wasn't enough. Was I too predictable, too ordinary for her son? Then there were the little inconsistencies in Evan's stories, claims about meetings that never existed, trips that weren't on the calendar, names of colleagues I'd never met. Each one felt minor alone, but together they started to form a pattern I couldn't ignore. Nights I would try to sleep, I'd replay interactions, trying to see if I had imagined something, trying to justify away the tiny alarms. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I'm too sensitive. The atmosphere at home grew tense. Even our conversations, once easy and filled with laughter, became clipped. He'd smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I could feel the distance, an invisible wall creeping between us. I'd catch myself glancing at him, searching for truth in his expressions, hoping to find reassurance that everything was fine. Instead, I felt a constant gnawing uncertainty. I began remembering past events in a new light, weekends when he was working late, or trips to the hardware store that coincided with unusual absences. Small details I'd dismissed before now took on new significance. Were those innocent coincidences, or pieces of a larger puzzle I was too naive to see? And then came the texts I saw by accident, just fleeting previews on his phone while charging in the living room. A name I didn't recognize. Words like, "can't wait until you're free," and "tomorrow when Julia's gone." My stomach sank. I forced myself to look away, pretending nothing was there, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. Ivy wasn't even in this picture yet, but the weight of uncertainty, the creeping realization that the person I trusted might be betraying me, began to settle in my chest. My friends noticed the change in me, subtle but present. The careful, confident Julia seemed smaller somehow, quieter, lost in thoughts that churned endlessly. And the worst part? Even as I felt the walls closing in, I doubted myself. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm imagining betrayal where there is none. But deep down I knew. I knew that trust, once questioned, never fully recovers. Something had shifted, and I could feel the coming storm. Looking back now, I can see the pattern clearly, the warning signs, the subtle manipulations, the invisible threads of deceit. But at the time, I had no idea that those small moments would escalate into a life-altering betrayal, one that would leave me standing in an empty apartment holding the daughter of the woman who had taken everything from me. It was a Tuesday evening. Ordinary on the surface, but ordinary had never been more deceptive. Evan had gone to a work dinner, or so he said, leaving his phone on the counter to charge. I sat on the couch, scrolling through emails, pretending not to notice the tiny buzzes lighting up his screen. Normally, I would never touch his phone. Trust, after all, had been the foundation of our relationship. But that night, a preview of a message flashed across the screen. "Can't wait for Julia to leave for work tomorrow." The words were from a name I didn't recognize, someone close enough to him to have insider knowledge. My chest tightened, heart pounding like a drum I couldn't control. My hands trembled as I unlocked the phone. One message became two, two became dozens. Screenshots, secret plans, hotel receipts, and private meetings, all detailing a 2-year affair that had been orchestrated while I was working late, managing our apartment, and believing in the life we were building together. I read about evenings I thought were quiet and lonely, only for Evan to be laughing with another woman. I saw messages mocking me, comparing me unfavorably to someone else, labeling me safe, predictable, boring. Every word cut deeper than the last. My body felt like it had been hollowed out. My hands shook violently, spilling my coffee across the table. The room felt suffocating, the walls pressing closer with every revelation. When Evan returned, I couldn't contain myself. I confronted him immediately, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "What is all this?" I demanded, holding the phone like evidence in a trial. He froze, his casual charm evaporating into panic. "Julia, Don't even start," I interrupted, tears blurring my vision. "I've seen the messages, the hotels, the plans, the lies. 2 years, Evan. 2 years. How could you? How could you do this to me?" He stammered, trying to justify it. It just happened. I didn't plan it." "Didn't plan it?" I repeated, my voice breaking but sharp, slicing through the room. "You scheduled it around my work, texted her when I was out of town, laughed about me behind my back. Didn't plan it? Evan, you've been living a double life while I thought we were building a future together." His eyes darted, guilt and fear mixing in a way I'd never seen before. "Julia, sometimes people just connect. Chemistry happens." I laughed bitterly, a sound that made my chest ache. "Chemistry? Is that what you call betraying someone for 2 years? Mocking them, and then telling them they're too boring to deserve love?" He faltered. Words failed him. I felt a strange, hollow rage settle into my bones. 2 years. 2 years of loyalty, of commitment, of believing in him, of dreaming about a future we were supposed to have, all destroyed in secret. And the woman he chose over me? She wasn't even in my life yet, but the betrayal had already created her. Ivy, their 10-month-old daughter, the living symbol of everything stolen from me. I felt sick, the room spinning, my thoughts jagged and sharp. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to destroy everything around me. But more than that, I wanted answers. I wanted Evan to feel the weight of every lie, every cruel word, every plan he had executed behind my back. "I can't believe I was so blind," I whispered, almost to myself. "I thought I knew you, Evan. I thought we were building something real, and all this time you were planning your exit with her." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. My heart raced uncontrollably, my stomach twisted. I felt the betrayal in every nerve, every inch of my being, and yet beneath the fury and heartbreak, a strange clarity began to form. I had been betrayed, yes, but I was still standing, still alive, still capable of making choices, of reclaiming my life, even if the life I thought I had was gone forever. That night, I realized everything had changed. There was no going back, no pretending nothing had happened. My relationship with Evan, my dreams of a future together, even the image of the family I thought we were building, they were all gone, and in their place stood a reality I wasn't ready for. The child he had created with someone else, and the unimaginable responsibility that had just been thrust onto me. I sank onto the couch, phone still in hand, feeling the room spin, my chest tight, tears streaming freely. I didn't know how I would survive what came next, but I knew that from this moment on, nothing in my life would ever be the same. The first few days after the confrontation felt surreal. I moved through our apartment like a ghost, each corner haunted by memories of what had been. Laughter, late-night conversations, quiet mornings with coffee in hand, and now all tainted by deception. I kept thinking about Evan's words, his feeble attempts at justification, and the venomous way he had dismissed my worth. You're too safe, too predictable, boring. Those words replayed in my mind like a broken record, echoing every insecurity I had ever tried to bury. I questioned myself constantly. Was I really inadequate? Was I too careful, too steady, too reliable? I had built my life on honesty, responsibility, and loyalty. I had believed those were virtues, not flaws, yet Evan's betrayal painted them as weaknesses. The comparison to his affair partner, someone who embodied excitement and passion, felt like a punch to the gut. I sat alone for hours, staring at the empty spaces he had once filled. I thought about the life I had imagined, proposing to him, picking out rings together, planning a home, a future. And in the same breath, I realized none of it would ever exist, not with him, not with her. But anger mingled with grief, and grief with disbelief. How could someone I trusted so completely orchestrate a lie that stretched over 2 years? Every smile, every gentle word, every promise, were they all lies? My hands shook as I clutched the phone, scrolling through the evidence again, almost as if seeing it would make it real, and yet I dreaded confirming it. It wasn't just betrayal, it was an assault on my identity, my understanding of love and self-worth. I kept asking myself, did I miss the signs? Was I blind? I revisited old messages, casual excuses, sudden late nights, and fleeting smirks he had flashed at me. Each memory cut deeper now that I knew the truth. And then came the phone call from Child Protective Services. They asked if I could take Ivy, the baby he had, with the woman who had abandoned her, temporarily. I felt my stomach twist. My first instinct was to say no. This isn't my responsibility. This is not my child. The logical part of my brain screamed at me to let the system handle it, and yet a deeper, unshakable sense of morality settled in. I thought of my father walking away when things got hard, leaving my mother and sister to handle the chaos alone. I swore I would never be that person. I didn't answer immediately. I spent hours staring at my phone, imagining the tiny life that needed care, love, stability. A child who had done nothing wrong but was already entangled in the mistakes of adults. I thought about the kind of person I wanted to be, the legacy of care and responsibility I hoped to leave. Finally, I made the call. I'll take her temporarily, I said, my voice firm despite the turmoil inside. Someone has to step up. The first meeting with Ivy was nothing like I imagined. She was tiny, fragile, and her dark eyes seemed to pierce straight through me. She looked at me with curiosity and caution, as if assessing whether I was safe, whether I was trustworthy. I felt an immediate, strange tightness in my chest, responsibility, dread, and an unexplainable sense of connection all rolled into one. Holding her, I realized that life had thrown me into a role I hadn't asked for, a test I hadn't prepared for, and yet one I couldn't turn away from. Ivy cried at first, tiny wails that made my heart ache, and yet when I held her, she calmed. The weight of 2 lives, the life she had, and the life I had lost with Evan, pressed on me. I wondered if I was enough, if I could navigate the complexities of a child born from betrayal while still trying to salvage my own identity. Late that night, after putting Ivy to bed, I sat on the couch, exhausted, emotionally raw, and wondered how I would move forward. How do you rebuild your self-worth when the person who knew you best has defined your strengths as weaknesses? I didn't have an answer, only a determination to try, to survive, and perhaps to redefine what family, loyalty, and love truly meant on my own terms. It was the first time I realized that surviving betrayal wasn't just about walking away. It was about stepping into a new role, taking responsibility, and proving to myself that I could be more than the scars they left behind. The days turned into weeks, and the weight of Ivy's care pressed heavily on me. I was exhausted, emotionally raw, and constantly aware that Evan's betrayal had left more than just heartbreak. It had left a tiny human depending on me. I had barely begun to process my own feelings when the external pressures started closing in. It began subtly with Evan's family. His mother, Patricia, called one evening, her voice a mix of concern and thinly veiled judgment. "Julia, we understand this is difficult, but you can't expect to do this alone forever. Evan should be part of this." "I am doing this alone," I said firmly, "because he's not here, because he chose her over me. and now Ivy is my responsibility. Patricia sighed, a sound meant to convey disappointment. It's not that simple. You're young, Julia. You can't shoulder everything. He should be helping, even if... Her voice trailed off, implying the unspoken truth. Even if he betrayed you, he owes his child something. I clenched my fists, anger simmering under the surface. I had always tried to meet their expectations, to be polite, accommodating, even nurturing toward them. And now? Now they questioned my capability to care for a child that wasn't even mine. Then the calls from friends and acquaintances started. Some tried to mediate, offering advice. Maybe you should let him be part of the baby's life. Others were sharper. He's the father. You can't just step in and replace him. Every word cut differently, a chorus of doubt echoing in my mind. For the first time, I questioned not just Evan, but the society that seemed to value biological connection over care, over love, over the countless sleepless nights, the meticulous planning, the constant sacrifices I was making for Ivy. And yet, the physical evidence of betrayal kept coming. I found small receipts, subtle hints that they had continued their secret meetings even during weekends when I thought Evan was working. Old messages resurfaced from forgotten backups, showing how meticulously he had plotted, how calculated he had been. It was infuriating. 2 years of duplicity, 2 years of lies, all hidden in plain sight. The tension escalated one evening when Patricia showed up unannounced, Ivy in tow for a visit. She criticized the way I had arranged the baby's room, questioned my choices in daycare, and even commented on Ivy's sleep schedule. She's your responsibility, yes, but don't forget she's still Evan's daughter. You need to respect that. I stood my ground, every nerve taut. I respect her as a child, and I am her caretaker. Right now, that's enough. Your concern is noted, but this is my home, my decisions, and my responsibility. Her eyes narrowed. You're overstepping, Julia. Don't forget your place. I felt something inside me shift, something that had been dormant, buried under layers of heartbreak and doubt. I wasn't a doormat, and I wasn't the fragile, naive girl they had underestimated. My place, I said steadily, meeting her gaze, is here, with Ivy. And I will not apologize for being the person she needs. It wasn't just Evan's family. Friends who had once offered support began to weigh in with unsolicited advice, often blaming me for keeping her away from her biological father, even though he had abandoned her before she even had a chance to know him. Each comment, each intrusion, added fuel to a fire that I didn't know I had inside me. But slowly, I realized that fire was mine. It wasn't destructive. It was transformative. It was giving me strength, resolve, and clarity. I started documenting everything. Schedules, appointments, milestones. Each action I took was deliberate, meticulous, and protective. Ivy's first steps, first words, first little accomplishments. I was there for every moment. And as I grew into this role, I began to see Evan's absence in stark relief, his betrayal less like a wound and more like a catalyst, forcing me to step up in ways I hadn't imagined I could. The tipping point came when a heated argument broke out over a minor detail. Evan's sister, Lila, tried to assert authority over Ivy's bedtime routine, claiming she knew what's best. I exploded, not in a childish tantrum, but in measured, sharp, undeniable authority. I appreciate your concern, Lila, but this is my responsibility. Ivy's well-being comes first, not your opinions or his mother's judgments. I'm doing what's right, and I will not be undermined. Silence fell. They hadn't expected me to speak with such certainty. For the first time, I recognized that I had changed. The betrayal, the constant pressure, the emotional minefield, it had forged me into someone capable of standing firm, of protecting what mattered. I wasn't the girl who had believed her worth could be measured by someone else's approval. I was Julia Mills, and I could survive anything, even the chaos of the people who had once defined my world. And in that silence, Ivy looked up at me, small hands clutching mine, trusting me completely. That tiny, unwavering faith reminded me of why I fought, why I endured, and why I would continue to rise, no matter how high the walls of doubt and conflict were built around me. The nights were the hardest. Ivy finally asleep in her crib, the apartment silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, and I was left alone with the echoing emptiness. The betrayal, the exhaustion, the unrelenting pressure, It all hit me at once. My body ached from carrying a tiny human. My mind ached from replaying Evan's words, and my heart ached from the absence of the life I had imagined. I sat on the couch, knees drawn up, hands clasped over my face. Tears rolled down, unchecked, a torrent I hadn't allowed myself in front of anyone. The sense of isolation was suffocating. Friends and family were either gone or intrusive in the wrong ways. Evan's presence was non-existent, except in memories that now felt poisonous. The betrayal wasn't just his. It had rippled through every corner of my life. I thought about the little moments with Ivy that should have brought comfort, the first time she held my hand, the small smile she gave me when I sang a lullaby. But even those were tinged with despair, because every time I looked at her, I saw a reflection of everything stolen from me. My relationship with Evan, the dreams of our future, the trust I had so willingly given. And yet, her small, trusting eyes also reminded me that someone needed me, even if that someone was not mine by blood. The calls from CPS became relentless. They wanted updates, documentation, confirmation that Ivy was adjusting. I felt like a fraud. I was not a mother. I was not prepared for this. And yet if I faltered, if I admitted to my own fragility, would it all collapse? Would they take her away? The thought was unbearable. I remember one night in particular, Ivy crying inconsolably for hours. I tried everything, feeding, rocking, singing, pacing, but nothing soothed her. My hands were raw, my arms trembling, my voice hoarse from repeated attempts at comfort. Finally, she fell asleep in my arms, tiny chest rising and falling, and I felt a hollow ache settle in my chest. I was responsible for her entire world, and I had no idea if I was enough. The memories of Evan's betrayal mixed with exhaustion and isolation to form a crushing weight. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining his face in every room, in every corner, his casual dismissal of my worth, echoing endlessly. "You're too safe, too predictable, boring." Those words became a mantra in my mind, a torment I couldn't escape. I questioned everything about myself, my strength, my judgment, my ability to love and be loved. I replayed every interaction with Evan, every choice I had made, every trust I had placed in him. I wondered if I had been foolish, naive, blind. My identity felt fractured, splintered between who I had been and the woman I was being forced to become. Even Ivy, whose presence had once been a strange solace, became a mirror of my inadequacy. Her needs were constant, unforgiving, and exhausting. Feeding, diaper changes, nap schedules, doctor visits, it was endless. And in my moments of weakness, I imagined leaving everything behind, walking away, letting the system handle it. But then her small hand would reach for me, her tiny voice calling my name, and I would remember why I couldn't. She needed me, not Evan, not her biological mother, not anyone else. She needed someone who would stay, who would care, who would fight for her. And in that realization, a spark of defiance flickered. Yes, I was broken, exhausted, overwhelmed. Yes, my heart ached with betrayal, grief, and loneliness. But I was still standing. And even in the darkest night, I knew that I had to endure, not for Evan, not for anyone else, but for Ivy, the innocent life caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes. That night, lying awake as Ivy slept, I cried silently, whispered apologies to a child who didn't need them, and made a promise to myself. I would not let this darkness define me. I would rise, somehow, from the depths of despair, and I would protect the little life that now depended on me. It was the lowest point of my life, the night I truly understood despair, yet it was also the night I realized that the journey forward, however painful, was mine to take, and mine alone. The turning point came unexpectedly, as turning points often do, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a quiet moment of clarity. I had been organizing Ivy's room, sorting through piles of tiny clothes and toys, when a file I had forgotten about fell from a drawer. It was Cruz's business insurance paperwork, dated from years ago, listing me as the emergency contact for Ivy. My hands froze. This tiny slip of paper, something I had overlooked in the chaos, suddenly reframed everything. I realized then that even before the betrayal, even before Evan and Sloan had shattered my life, I had unknowingly been part of Ivy's existence. Cruz had trusted me, believed in me, and in a strange, indirect way, I had always had a responsibility to this child. That knowledge ignited something inside me, a fierce, undeniable sense of purpose. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel pride. Not the fragile pride tied to Evan's approval, but real, grounded pride in what I had done and what I was capable of. I had survived betrayal. I had embraced a child that was not mine by blood, cared for her, protected her, and loved her fiercely despite my doubts. The truth hit me. My worth was not defined by someone else's perception, nor by the failures of those who had abandoned me. My worth was defined by the life I chose to create in the aftermath. The next few days, I acted with a newfound determination. I reviewed Ivy's care plan, organized appointments, and even drafted a tentative schedule for balancing my work with her needs. I called CPS to clarify my role and asked pointed questions about legal options for permanent guardianship. The idea of adopting her, of making her mine officially, no longer seemed like a daunting prospect. It felt like a natural extension of the commitment I had already made. A friend, neutral and wise, helped me see what I had been blind to. "Julia," she said one evening over coffee, "you've already been her parent for months. The legal system is just catching up. The choice isn't about whether you can do it. It's about whether you recognize that you already are doing it, every day." Her words struck me like a revelation. I had been waiting for permission, from Evan, from his family, from the world, to claim my place. But I didn't need permission. I already had it. From Ivy. The clarity gave me courage. I decided that I would not let Evan's past actions, nor the chaotic aftermath of betrayal, dictate my path. I would step forward boldly, embracing the responsibility I had already assumed and solidifying the bond I had built with Ivy. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything to Evan or anyone else. It was about claiming my own life, my own choices, and my own family. I remember holding Ivy that night, her tiny arms wrapped around my neck, hair tickling my cheek. I whispered promises to her, not about the past, not about her biological parents, but about the life we would create together. Stability, love, trust, a home where she would never feel abandoned or unsafe. That moment changed me. The despair and exhaustion that had defined the past months transformed into resolve and clarity. I was no longer the woman defined by betrayal. I was Julia Mills, protector, guardian, mother in every sense that mattered. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to imagine a future that wasn't shadowed by loss, but illuminated by the life I had chosen to embrace. It was the moment I understood the truth. Family is not always about biology. It's about presence, dedication, and the courage to stand firm when life tests you most. And I was ready. I would fight for Ivy, not out of obligation, but out of love. And in that fight, I would reclaim my power, my self-worth, and my life. The days after my turning point were marked by a strange sense of calm, even as the consequences of the past months began to unravel around Evan. His carefully constructed world, the one he had built on betrayal and deception, started to collapse in ways I never had to orchestrate. It began quietly, with whispers among his friends and acquaintances. Word spread of the affair, of his abandonment, and of the chaos that had followed. People who had once admired him for his charm now looked at him with a mix of pity and judgment. The bravado that had once shielded him from accountability faded, leaving him exposed. Then came his family. Evan's parents, who had subtly pressured me to understand his side, suddenly realized that their son's decisions had real, tangible consequences. They began to withdraw their support, no longer offering empty platitudes or thinly veiled justifications. For the first time, Evan faced the isolation that comes when those closest to you see through the facade. Even some mutual friends who had tried to mediate, who had suggested that Ivy should spend time with him, began to pull away. The lies, the long-term betrayal, and the utter disregard for the people who trusted him had left scars that even charm could not heal. He was confronted not by me, but by the truth itself, cascading into every corner of his life. I watched it unfold without a shred of satisfaction or revenge in my heart. There was no gloating, no desire to hurt him, just a quiet acknowledgement that the universe, in its own way, had a way of balancing justice. My focus remained on Ivy, on creating a stable, loving environment for her, and on reclaiming my own life from the wreckage he had left behind. When the court date arrived, I walked into the courthouse with Ivy in my arms, calm and composed. Evan didn't appear. Sloan didn't appear either. The judge, after reviewing the months of evidence and documentation of my care, approved the adoption without contest. Ivy was legally mine. The papers in my hands were not just legal documents. They were a testament to the life I had built, the love I had nurtured, and the strength I had discovered within myself. Returning home that evening felt surreal. I carried Ivy through the door, set her down in her room, and watched as she explored the space we had created together. Every toy, every book, every small detail reflected the love, patience, and care I had poured into her life. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of completeness. Evan's absence was a shadow, but it no longer held power over me. The man who had once defined my insecurities, who had used my fears against me, was no longer a part of my narrative. He had left, and in doing so, he had freed me to claim a life that was entirely my own. Even when his family reached out to discuss the adoption, I remained polite but firm. Ivy was my daughter now, in every sense that mattered. The past could not be rewritten, but the future was mine to shape, and in that clarity, I found a profound sense of peace. I didn't seek revenge, and I didn't need to. The truth, the love, and the care I had given Ivy spoke louder than any confrontation could. The fallout, in the end, was not about punishment. It was about the natural consequences of choices made, the reckoning that comes when deception and betrayal are exposed. As I tucked Ivy into bed that night, watching her eyes flutter closed, I realized that the life I had once mourned was now fully within my grasp. The man who had shattered my trust had inadvertently shown me my strength. The woman I had feared I would never be had emerged, resilient, loving, and unshakable. And in that quiet moment, with the soft rise and fall of Ivy's breath, I understood the ultimate truth. Life may hand you betrayal, loss, and heartache, but it also offers the opportunity to rise above it, to create something real, something enduring, something beautiful. And that was exactly what I had done. The morning sun streamed through Ivy's bedroom window, casting a golden glow on her tiny, tousled hair. I watched her stretch and yawn, a little smile breaking across her face. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in years. The chaos, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it was all behind me now. What mattered was the life we were building together. Adopting Ivy wasn't just about legal papers. It was about love, commitment, and showing up every single day, even when it was hard. Every scraped knee I kissed better, every bedtime story I read, every sleepless night I endured, it was proof that family is made of actions, not biology. I had finally learned that being a parent isn't about perfection. It's about presence, patience, and unwavering love. As I made breakfast, Ivy toddled to my side, giggling and reaching for my hand. "Daddy, eggs?" she asked in her tiny voice, and I laughed, feeling warmth flood my chest. She was my daughter in every way that mattered. Chosen family, built through care and devotion, had replaced the empty promises and betrayal of the past. The lessons I carried were hard-earned, but invaluable. I learned that self-worth cannot be dictated by others, no matter how much they once meant to you. I learned that strength isn't always about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's often quiet, steadfast, and unyielding. And most importantly, I learned that love can heal, transform, and empower in ways that betrayal never can. Sometimes I think about Evan and Sloan, about the lives they chose and the chaos they left behind. But I don't dwell on anger or resentment. Their choices shaped my journey, yes, but they no longer define me. What defines me is how I rise, how I love, and how I create a life worth living. Ivy climbed onto my lap, snuggling against my chest, and I held her close. I whispered stories of courage, of resilience, and of the importance of family, stories that reflected the life we were living, not the one I had lost. She listened with wide, trusting eyes, and in that trust, I found the final piece of my healing. Life had thrown me into a storm I never expected, but I had navigated it with grace, strength, and love. I was no longer the woman defined by betrayal or doubt. I was Julia Mills, a mother, a protector, and a survivor. And as Ivy's laughter filled the room, I knew that this was only the beginning of a life filled with love, possibility, and chosen family. Sometimes the people who walk away aren't taking something from you. They're leaving you space to become exactly who you were meant to be. And for me, that space became a home, a family, and a love that would endure far beyond the pain of the past.